with us if you want to know what's going on with Alabama football recruiting.
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Great. As we talked about on the last show, June is now a huge recruiting month. So I get excited about talking recruiting.
Let's start right in the middle of it with, everybody talks about Richard Young, the fabulous running back out of Florida that a lot of people think Alabama leads for. Some people have him the number one running back in the country. Well, at On 3, you guys actually have a kid named Cedric Baxter ranked number one. And just recently, like last week, he removed Arkansas from his top 5 and added Alabama, which is interesting. And he based it on the fact that, Alabama just picked up their recruiting of him, and it makes a lot of sense. But what do you think here, Jimmy? First of all, I assume Alabama would take both Baxter and Young. Secondly, which one do you think they prefer?
Well, I mean, obviously you take both. I don't know how possible that's going to be to land both based on, most kids of that caliber want to be the show, right? So I don't know how possible it is to land both. I don't know when you're talking about kids as good as those two are, whether you have one sort of in front of the other. I think it's almost like the Arch Manning, Eli Holstein situation when both kids are so good, you don't really have one in front of the other. It's just like, hey, one of you guys is ready to pull the trigger. We're here to say yes. So I don't know that Alabama's going to have one in front of the other. I think both are a take. I think either one is a take. I still tend to think it's going to be Richard Young because Alabama has sort of had a closer relationship with him longer than what's going on with Baxter, who's been a little more open in the process, whereas Richard Young sort of early on narrowed it down to 3 or 4 that he really liked. And by process of elimination, it's just kind of ended up Alabama. And I think that's where Richard Young was sort of leaning to all along. I did back in January on the On 3 board, I put the huddle tapes of the top 5 or 6 running backs in the nation that were involved with Alabama, including Baxter, including Richard Young, Justice Haynes from Georgia, and Reuben Owens from Texas. Bunch of guys, actually 5 or 6. I included even Jeremiah Cobb from Montgomery. I put their huddle tapes up and just said, hey, what guy do you like best? If you watched all this tape. I know myself, I tended to like Richard Young the best myself. I just think he's an ideal fit in what Alabama's been doing at running back. I think personality-wise, he's kind of a Saban bot. Real good kid, real hard working, puts football first. I think, not that all the other kids don't either, but I just really like Richard Young's fit in the program. Now, how good is Baxter? He's extremely good. I mean, On 3 says he's the best back in the country. We have a great evaluation process that comes up with this stuff. I love Baxter. I think he's great. It's a coin flip, frankly, but me personally, I like Richard Young. And I have RPM to Richard Young to Alabama, and I'm still sticking with that.
Wouldn't it be something if Alabama ended up with Eli Holstein and Cedric Baxter when a month or so ago it felt like they may end up with Arch Manning and Richard Young? Now, Richard Young, I'm with you. I think Richard Young still signs with Alabama. At least I hope he does. I'm with you. I like him the most of any running back in this class. He's just got he's just different. I hate it when people say that because it's become so cliche that now when people say different, it's the same. But he is different. Now, Cedric Baxter is very, very good as well. But I have not, as my phone rings, even though I tried my best to keep things.
Is it Baxter? Baxter didn't like where we had him ranked.
Yeah, Baxter's calling me and saying, hey, what are you doing over there? I mean, why don't you love me? Love me.
Richard Young. Give me a break.
All right. We're going to talk more recruiting when we come back. I'm going to tell everybody right now about Rock Auto. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questions like, is your Honda Odyssey an LX or an EX or an FXX, whatever, and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home. At .com? How about .com?
Either one. Either one's fine.
They probably both get you there. At home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30 and 50, even 100% more for the same parts at a local chain store? You don't want to do that. That's silly. Go to rockauto.com. It's a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck right locked on in their How'd You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Rock Auto. Let me figure out how to get that off. Okay, there we go. Jimmy, let's continue talking some recruiting.
Love it.
Your own 3 cohort, Joseph Hastings, friend of the program. He had another update on Tamarian Parker, Central Phoenix City, one of the big-time defensive linemen in the state of Alabama this year. He attended the University of Florida spring game. He told reporters that Alabama, Florida, and Ohio State were separating themselves from the pack. So those 3, Michigan State, Penn State, Tennessee, still in the hunt. It sounds like Auburn isn't, which is a little bit interesting. But, what do you think here? Is this a guy that you think ends up at Alabama? I know you like him a lot.
I do like Tamarian Parker a lot. I hesitate. He's an ideal prospect to talk about in terms of why I haven't really made a class projection this year. I would want to include Parker, but it's hard. It's the best year in Alabama maybe ever, and if I'm wrong, I know for damn sure it's the best cycle of front 7 guys ever. I've never seen this many linebackers and defensive linemen in state that are this good, like Tamarian Parker. But the problem, if you want to call it a problem, it's actually not a problem. But the deal is it's also an outstanding year for front 7 prospects regionally. There's a ton of great kids in the South. There's a ton of great kids nationally in these particular position groups. It's like a deep draft. It's sort of like, if this was the NFL draft, you're going into it going, why are we spending a first-round pick on a front 7 guy when we can just wait till the second round and still get first-round value for a front 7 guy? We're not going to waste a pick on the guy we like the most. We'll get a first-round guy in the second round. That's sort of like how it is with the front 7 guys in this class. So Parker, does Alabama like him? I'm sure they do. He's great, but is he at the very top of the board? Probably not. Do you take him anyway? Probably. I mean, I think if he picked up the phone today and said, I want to commit, I can't imagine the answer to that from anyone. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. I can't imagine anyone turning that kid away. But Alabama's just in a unique position when it comes to these front 7 guys this cycle. So I'll be honest and say I'm not absolutely sure that Tamarian Parker ends up in this class. But is he a good prospect? No, he's a great prospect. I love him. There's other kids that fit this. Even Keldrick Falk from Highland Home. Alabama's not in his final 5 or 6. That's a kid Alabama would have died trying to sign 99 of the last 100 years. And I'm not sure Alabama's even sending the kid postcards. And he's a really good prospect. I think he's going to end up at Auburn or maybe Clemson, LSU, Tennessee. I mean, Falk's really good, and his younger brother's, coming right behind him, who's just as good. So crazy year in the front 7. But Tamarian Parker, I love him. I hope he ends up in this class. If he doesn't, there's a good chance Alabama gets a kid just as good or better. So it's a good situation for Alabama.
Mary buried the lead right there. So Alabama, you don't think is going to make the cut for Falk?
I don't think we're in Keldrick Falk's current top 5. Now, keep in mind, what hasn't happened yet? Summer camps. It's the number one thing that changes the board and changes recruiting and changes the situation. Camps, just it's like you put all the pieces. If these kids were cards, in the 52 cards, they're shuffled, during summer camp. So no telling who's going to end up on top. But as of today, as of when we're recording this, no, I don't think Falk's even going to visit Alabama. And I don't know whether that's his call or Alabama's. I get the impression it's Alabama's. And again, he's just squeezed out due to the numbers, I would guess. But I like him a lot. I think he's outstanding. And I think, again, 99 years out of 100, this is a top priority for Alabama.
Well, I know some place everybody should visit, and that's Bet Online. Go to our partners at Bet Online. They continue to be number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. Bet Online is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions at Bet Online. Because you know what? Bet Online, that's where the game starts. Jimmy, this just came across the wire as we're talking, not recruiting related, but all charges against Jerry Jeudy were dismissed. It sounds like that was a big hullabaloo about nothing.
That was disgraceful.
It's really stupid that, I mean, it's so fun. Boy, I'm a pro law enforcement guy, but some of these things that have happened recently have been bad. And so we get, anyway, the charges dismissed against Jerry Jeudy, which is great news. And it sounds like once you got into the story, everybody's like, this should have never happened. But again, I sympathize with those trying to make these calls, because if it turns out to be something and you did nothing, then all of a sudden it could be awful. I guess it's better to be overreactive than underreactive, but man, you hate it when it's Jerry Jeudy, or you hate it if you're Jerry Jeudy or you're a fan of Alabama or whatever, or Denver. So congratulations to him to getting this all, put to bed. And I hate that he even had to go through any of this. But let's go back and talk a little bit more recruiting. One other thing that our buddy Joseph Hastings was talking about was some juniors, top 100 juniors from Texas, safeties. Javian Toviano, am I saying that right?
You got me.
Okay. And Peyton Bowen.
Right.
Peyton Bowen is number 6 safety on the 2023 consensus. He's been a Notre Dame commit since he committed on New Year's Day, which is interesting. But Alabama just keeps pushing for him. And then you've got Javian Toviano, I should say, is the highly sought-after safety who he's got Alabama in his top 8. And he felt like it says Alabama made the cut here because Toviano felt he could not eliminate them from his recruitment. I mean, that's the program's tradition, and their success over the years made it a no-brainer to keep Alabama on the list. What an interesting, very honest answer. Alabama's just too good to cut. I mean, it's not like there was something that was appealing to him except the overall greatness. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, as hard as it is for Alabama to turn down kids, I think it's harder for kids to turn down Alabama. And you just read, what's not the only, what's not to like about Alabama? Well, I mean, you might not play right away. I mean, if that's the most important thing to you in the whole world, then maybe in other places is the best spot for you. But, you might not be able to play right away. There's a lot of talent. You kind of have to stand in line for a while. But, safety, those two guys were really good players, obviously. The safety I enjoy talking about the most, because what's really interesting to me is Caleb Downs in Georgia. I think he's incredible. I think, if there was such a thing as a 6-star, he should be one. To me, Caleb Downs is as good a safety prospect as there can be, in high school football. And a couple of interesting things. It's hard to imagine him getting out of Georgia, right? It's like, how are you going to get him out of Georgia? And for those that don't know, he's the younger brother of North Carolina superstar wide receiver Josh Downs, who may be a first-round pick in the NFL draft next April. Caleb is his younger brother. So he's already got a brother in the family that's proven to be a college star. But here's what's really interesting. I've thought all along, well, Alabama's probably not going to finish first on Caleb Downs, because how are you going to get what amounts to the number 1 player in Georgia out of Georgia? Well, Caleb's actually leaning to Ohio State. I mean, right now he's saying Ohio State is his favorite. Ohio State's his leader. So I'm not sure that that Alabama won't end up, with Caleb Downs, which would be great. I think it's safety. That's where I look to first. A couple of in-state guys are real interesting there. Obviously, Tony Mitchell from Birmingham, who's could be a corner, could be a safety. He's a guy. Makari Vickers from Tallahassee, who went to the same high school, and he's good friends with Terry and Arnold. That's a guy who may be leaning to Alabama, and he is also a fantastic prospect.
Safety is going to be a position of need this year, it seems like. And so you think Alabama will take 2?
I'm going to go with 2, maybe 3, but Alabama signed a couple in the last class in Pope, Jake Pope and Antonio Kite, who are summer guys. They've shown up this summer. I thought Fagan was going to play safety. I think that was the initial plan, by the way, for people that want to know this level of detail going on in the program. I thought Traquan Fagan from Thompson was going to play safety, and I do believe that was the plan. But he actually played corner this spring, which is great because for those that don't know or think about this, it's pretty easy to transition from corner to safety, but it's really tough to transition from safety to corner, physically. Corner is just a more difficult, demanding position athletically. So, if you're not sure, start them out at corner. If it doesn't work out, maybe they can play safety. But if you start them at safety, you'll never move them to corner. So that's sort of interesting. All these guys are really good prospects. But man, if you want to get fired up, watch some Caleb Downs tape. He's great. He's in that Landon Collins, Clinton Dix, Mark Barron, Eddie Jackson. Just name all the great Alabama safeties under Saban. You'll see a little bit of all of them in Caleb Downs.
All right, buddy, that's going to do it for this episode. Tomorrow we'll be back. We'll probably talk some SEC meeting news because there should be some. It's going on as we speak, and we'll be back with that tomorrow. And until then, roll tide, everybody.